Formula One has a nepotism problem that lots of people don't really like to talk about.
No comments.
What I mean by this is some sports are more accessible than others in general. For example, if you would like to become an Olympic downhill skier, you need a pair of skis and a lift pass. If you want to become an Olympic mountain biker, you need a mountain bike. If you want to become an Olympic runner, you need 2 legs and a heartbeat. Off you go. However, if you want to become a Formula One driver, yeah, it's not that simple, buddy. In order to become a successful Formula One driver, you're going to need a few things. Step 1, you need a go-kart before you can even spell your own name. Step 2, you need an entire bloodline of motorsport engineers in your family. Step 3, a dad who's on the cover of Time magazine. Step 4, about $20 to $30 million sitting around in a bank account for expenses. You get the idea, Formula One is not accessible for the vast majority of people. However, there are some exceptions to this rule in Formula One, which is why I figured today I'm going to go over every single driver in Formula One, plus a few honourable mentions to really work out the degree of nepotism in the sport. Oh, and in case English isn't your strong suit, don't worry, I got you. Nepotism simply means the practice among those with power or influence of favouring their relatives, friends, or associates, especially by giving them jobs. So to put this into context, there's 20 seats in Formula One, and let's just say there might be more talented people who deserve these seats than some of the drivers. Therefore, to work out the degree of nepotism in Formula One, the video will start with the drivers who basically came from rags, ending with the drivers who came from riches. If some tax brackets interest you more than others, you can navigate to them down below with the timestamps. I'm also going to go over some honourable mentions at the end that should have made the video, but they're not on the current 2025 grid. And one last thing, even though the channel isn't 2 months old yet, we've got a small Discord server growing, so feel free to join. Rightio, that's everything I've got for the introduction. Let's get right into the nepotism in Formula One. So today's first section is the tax bracket in which the drivers essentially came from nothing. So I would argue that Esteban Ocon was the driver with the poorest background on the Formula One grid this year. I say this because Ocon's parents sold their house so that they could afford to attend all of his karting races, and they also apparently sold their family business so that Ocon's karting career could go full throttle. And it paid off because look, he has a race win, and that's a feat that many drivers never achieve. So love him or hate him, you've kind of got to respect the guy. He's proven that financial struggles can't block you from getting into arguably the most expensive sport in the world. Another prime example of the rags to riches story is Fernando Alonso. That's right, everybody's favourite 2-time world champion and rookie driver Fernando Alonso wasn't actually always rich. In fact, his first go-kart was hand-built by his father. That rounds out the first section though, and now we're going to move up to the next tax bracket, which is basically the working middle-class family. A prime example of this would be Lewis Hamilton, as his dad apparently worked 3 jobs at a time to fund his karting career. He clearly saw something in Lewis though, because talk about a return on investment. Goldman Sachs should hire Anthony Hamilton. This guy turned his son into an athlete worth $285 million. That's pretty crazy.
This is brilliant, but I like this.
Another driver that blends pretty well into this category is Liam Lawson. Now I don't know too much about him, but I do know that his family sold their house to support his racing career, which is just wild to me.
What?
I say this because if I made a Google Slides presentation and showed my parents 10 years ago on all the reasons why I think I would make a great F1 driver, I think it would have lasted about 30 seconds until they say, yeah, next time buddy. I mean seriously, selling your house on the fact that your son could be a Formula One driver in the future is just glorified gambling if you ask me. Like, no hate to Liam, but the guy's F1 career doesn't seem to be going that far up in the future. They should have just taken all the money and put it on Plinko balls instead. The other promising driver in the Red Bull Academy is Isaac Hadjar. And whilst his upbringing seems to be a little bit more comfortable than the past 2 drivers, I don't think it justifies bumping him up to the next tax bracket. My reasoning for this is both of his parents are physicists, and look, I don't know about you, but I don't exactly think scientists are the richest people on the planet. The final driver that fills out this tax bracket is Nico Hülkenberg. Now once again, I really couldn't find that much on him. Apparently his dad owns a shipping company, but I was basically going off his Wikipedia early life page, so don't start a war in the comments if he should be up a tax bracket or in this one. He by no means comes from billions, I can say that for sure. Right, this brings us to the next section where people start to have connections in Formula One and start to amass a lot more money. The first driver that I'm putting in this category is George Russell.
Welcome to Skibbity Toilet Baku, my dudes.
So in George's words, his family, and I quote, weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy. So I don't know if this is him being PR trained from a young age, but he also says that his dad created a successful business, so the guy is definitely not poor. The point I'm getting at here, and no hate George, is that he looks like the human embodiment of a kid that goes to a British private school, and he did go to private school as well, so I think he fits in this category perfectly. The next driver is Yuki Tsunoda, and he has a pretty similar upbringing to George Russell from what I understand. His family also has some background in motorsport.
Hey, Big Daddy.
As his father was a little known, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation, Gymkhana driver, which is a type of motorsport very popular in Japan. Moving along though, now I'm gonna talk about Alex Albon. Once again, many of you may find Alex's place on this list debatable, which is completely fine.
I don't have that answer, and I usually have every answer.
My reasoning for this is because although Alex's dad was also a racing driver, his upbringing wasn't exactly easy. He did go to private school for some time, but this all crashed and burnt when he turned 15, as his mum was jailed for a £7.5 million car scam. She was basically running the GTA import-export business with Ferraris, Rolls Royces, and Bentleys, selling them to people at discounted rates with a promise of selling them back again for quick profits. But yeah, I guess you could say this isn't the most sustainable business model in the book, so Albon's upbringing hasn't exactly been straightforward. The only other two drivers that I've got for this tax bracket are Pierre Gasly and Kimi Antonelli. The reason that I've grouped them together is they have the same thing in common, being they have a father who was pretty successful in motorsport and made sure that their son would be a Formula 1 driver. Gasly's dad was into karting, endurance racing, and rally car racing, whereas Antonelli's dad is a sports car racing driver who also owns a racing team that's competed in the Italian F4 championship, so I guess he would be 1 point above Pierre Gasly. That's it for this section though. Now there's going to be some major wealth being talked about, some people's families even having billions in their names. This category's first driver is Charles Leclerc, and he could be in the previous category, but he's on the verge of it. It just feels wrong putting someone from Monaco in the category before. But I do acknowledge the fact that his family wasn't exactly swimming in riches. In saying that though, his dad was an F3 driver, which has definitely helped his career. Up next is Gabriel Bortoleto, and whilst his wealth background is somewhat unclear to me, I know that he has motorsport connections because his father is the CEO of a stock car pro series in Brazil. Oh, and for reference, this is basically like the main derivation of competitive motorsport in South America, so this is a big deal. Next up is Oliver Behrman, and his family definitely has some real wealth going for them. Exhibit A. His dad is the owner of the Aventum Group, which is valued at about $1.9 billion. Exhibit B. Apparently the Behrman family has a lot of pet horses at home, and that is not cheap. Exhibit C. The kids of the Behrman family haven't exactly chosen cheap hobbies. One is a horse rider and two are racing drivers. That is not cheap. Okay, I'll stop dragging it. All you need to know here is that the Behrman family are definitely some of the richest in Essex, if you ask me. Now we've got the 2025 F1 Drivers' Champion, Oscar Piastri. Now, while some of the previous drivers have a stronger financial background, Piastri makes up for this in the connections department. This is because, sure, his dad only owns an automotive software company, only sent him to the best private schools he could, and only invested north of $6.5 million into Oscar. But that's nothing when you've got Mark Webber managing your career. So in short, there's two reasons I ranked him this high on the nepotism scale. His connections and background for one, but mainly because this lethal combination basically granted him the 2025 championship. Why am I speaking in past tense, you ask? 2025 is our year, try and stop us.
Yeah, in general, Australia is better.
Okay, no more Australian bias the rest of the video, I promise. Completing this upper class segment of the video is Lando Norris. Right off the bat, I gotta say his family is not struggling in the wealth department. His dad is worth well over £200 million, and he was a pioneer in the digitized pensions industry. So next time your loved ones are having trouble with their pensions managers, you know who to point fingers at. Jokes aside though, this substantial sum of money got Lando through his racing career and taught him a valuable skill in entrepreneurship, like drop shipping, with my favorite example being the LN racing car, which is pretty much an OTK car with cool stickers. Business 101, for real. But okay, look, no, I don't hate Lando. Alonso, Leclerc, and even the GOAT have all done the same thing. Now we're moving on to the bigger fish. That's right, no more tax brackets, full on IRS evasion mode now. The family ties aspect of the nepotism are really going to start showing now. So I'm going to start off with Max Verstappen. Alright, so the main aspect here is the resume of both of his parents. Not only was his mother a racing driver, but his dad was a Formula 1 driver, the only driver on the grid with this advantage. He also wasn't just any Formula 1 driver. I'm pretty sure being teammates and family friends with the Michael Schumacher has its benefits. In other words, Max was literally molded to be the F1 World Driver Champion when he was a kid, whether it's the info I just gave you or something as trivial as the gas station incident. Right, up next we've got Jack Doohan. Unfortunately for him, living in the shadow of his father's achievements is honestly an understatement, as his dad, Mick Doohan, won 5 MotoGP championships in a row. That's all I'll say about bicycles though. I know most of you agree with me that fast cars dominate fast bikes. Point being, many argue Jack Doohan's seat in Formula 1 is largely due to his surname, and I have to agree with that. A very similar case can be made for Carlos Sainz too though. Simply put, there's a reason his name is Carlos Sainz Jr. Granted, he's a multiple Formula 1 race winner and drove for the most prestigious team in F1. Fair enough. However, a lot of his opportunities in his racing career are thanks to his father, Carlos Sainz Sr. He is arguably one of the greatest rally drivers to exist, and similar to Mick Doohan, I'm certain that his LinkedIn network greatly aided his son into climbing the ranks to an F1 seat. But there you have it, my nepotism ranking for all 19 drivers. Emphasis on all 19 drivers. The recipient of my number 1 spot shouldn't be described as a driver. I prefer the term seat occupant or wasted space. I'm pretty sure you know where this is going. Rather than a not so fresh, overdone, beating a dead horse styled hate segment, I'm just going to be brutally honest. If you've watched this far, you probably know by now that sure, nepotism does greatly influence the Formula 1 grid. However, I'd say majority of the drivers can escape this label through their accomplishments. You know who hasn't though? In fact, scratch that. You know who physically cannot and will not beat the allegations? Ladies and gentlemen, I present you Lance Stroll.
Very happy.
Can't get a seat in Formula 1? No problem. Buy a team. Can't win? No problem. Rebrand the team and buy all the options. That's what you get when you're born on some private jet with an offshore bank account in some BS tax haven. Am I jealous? I'll let you decide. Trade offer. You receive $1 million, but you need to change your legal name to Lance Stroll. Hard pass, mate. Anyhow, I don't want to be a broken record, so I'll stop here. One thing for sure is that his name is engraved into the F1 history books. Most race starts without a fastest lap, and most Q1 exits in F1 history. Congratulations, Lance. Okay, so I guess that's every driver on the 2025 grid ranked regarding their, how should I put it, reliance on nepotism? That sounded better in my head, not gonna lie. I've still got some honourable mentions though. An addition to the surname club would have to be Mick Schumacher. Now I know this is a delicate subject and I'm not trying to offend his die-hard fan base because believe me, they do exist. All I'll say here is that if my dad also won 7 drivers' championships, I would also expect a fast pass to Formula 1. On that note, a similar instance would have to be that of Monaco-based YouTuber Nico Rosberg. That's right, even though he's the only driver in F1 history to beat both of the 7-time world champions in equal machinery, he did have some help getting there. What I'm referring to is the fact that his dad was also a Formula 1 world champion too, so that definitely helps. In saying that, fair play to him, he won his 2016 championship in equal machinery. Right, for the next driver, I'll dip into Billionaire's Row. Who remembers Nikita Mazepin? Exactly, point proven. If your memory is rusty, Nikita was the clown who only got an F1 seat because his Russian oligarch dad bought him a team. However, no degree of nepotism could save poor little Nikita from the wrath of,
aggressive expansion.
Yeah, I don't want to get taken down, so I'm gonna stop here. Basically, Nikita didn't acknowledge the
political and economic state of the world right now,
and he lost his seat. Another driver born on a Boeing business jet also happens to be an F1 legend. In fact, let's play a game of Guess Who. He once overtook Perez, Hamilton, Russell, and an Aston Martin in a single corner. He placed first in an official F1 session too. Final clue, he's more commonly known as a hollow-horned mammal. The driver I'm talking about is none other than Nicholas Latifi. However, even the GOAT was boosted by his fair share of nepotism, as his family may or may not be worth a few $1 billion. Doesn't matter in my eyes though, his family's wealth is essentially equal to that of the Strolls, and I don't know about you, but there is a clear winner in my books. On a more serious note, the very last driver I'll talk about today is Kimi Räikkönen. He is the definition of talent. To put this into context, the guy came from almost nothing. In fact, apparently when faced with the choice to install a toilet in their house or continue Kimi's karting career, the Raikkonen family opted to continue using an outhouse. Kimi's dad was his mechanic and even built Kimi his kart, and the rest is history. Kimi became an F1 world champion from just about nothing, proving that you don't need to be a Nepo baby to win. That brings me to the outro though. If you have to walk away with just one thing from today's video, it'd be that whilst nepotism clearly plays an important role in the dynamics of the Formula 1 driver market, there are always exceptions. In other words, whilst Formula 1 will always be quite an exclusive sport, I'm confident that from time to time, talent can outweigh nepotism. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you for watching, besties. It's serving.
If you enjoyed, liking this video and subscribing would help me out a lot. Also, be sure to check out the Discord server and other videos on the channel. Cheers.
Tend to go for some Nutella crepes. Exactly, Nutella crepes on Monday morning. It's a bit of a tradition. Let's say I do.